The Glen Afton branch was a 14-kilometre long railway line that left the North Island main trunk at Huntly. It was built primarily for transporting coal from the mines at Glen Afton and Rotorua, and although KiwiRail still runs trains as far as Rotorua, the other part of the line closed in 1973. This 5.9-kilometre long section is now operated as a heritage railway by the Bush Tramway Club, but it's severed from the rest of the branch due to industrial redevelopment in the Rotorua area. These days, the BTC runs passenger trains on the first Sunday of each month, and I visited on Sunday, August 4. Even though it's only 12 kilometres west of Huntly, it feels like you're way out in the middle of nowhere. Indeed, there's barely any phone reception on this line. Regardless, the railway is still fairly popular, especially amongst families. Unlike a lot of other heritage lines, the Bush Tramway Club doesn't have any large locomotives, like, for example, the KA Class 484. Instead, their collection is focused on smaller and more obscure locomotives, either built for NZR or industrial purposes. On this occasion, the passenger service was run by TR459 and Drewry 040 number 401 running in a top and tail formation, with the coaches being A1319 and AF 1047. I was told by one of the shed crew that they had plans to run Peckett 060 tank number 1630, but couldn't get enough volunteers to come round. TR459 was built by A&G Price of Thames in 1963, and has been at the BTC since 2022. At least, I think this was TR459, despite the lack of any numbers. For most of the day, I thought this thing was actually TR436, until I saw 436 in a siding with other stored rolling stock. In any case, 3 Price TRs are now based at the Bush Tramway Club, and they were all semi-recent acquisitions from KiwiRail. As for Drewry 401, she is one of the twin diesel shunters built in 1957. The pair originally worked at the Medre power station, and have been staples of the Bush Tramway Club's fleet in preservation. But on this occasion, 402 was out of action due to air leaks, based on what I was told. Just past the western end of the station, you can find this unusual steam locomotive displayed on a short but isolated length of track. This thing is E111, built by A&G Price in 1923 as one in a class of 4. To me at least, the design looks like a hybrid of the Climax and Heisler geared locomotives, with Climax-style cylinders and Heisler-style bogies. Just like many of her American-built counterparts, E111 worked in the logging industry. Between 1923 and 1929, she served with the Selwyn Timber Company in Mangatapu, not to be confused with the Tauranga suburb of Maungatapu. Later in her life, she worked for Ellison Burnand in Mangapehi and Ongarue, and served as the inspiration for the BTC's founding in 1965. Today, she sits as a static display at Pukemiro Station. Outside of the workshop, you could find this old crane and a Union Foundry rail tractor. The tractor has unusually wide wheel rims because she was originally built to run on wooden rails. I always found it strange that the station is referred to as Puke-Medro Junction despite not actually being a junction. In any case, visitors to the railway are welcome to explore the workshop as they please, which is a rare thing at New Zealand heritage railways. This was the underframe of Heisler No. 1082, a geared locomotive built in 1904. It'll certainly be interesting to see this locomotive running again, whenever that may be. Behind the Heisler, in another corner of the workshop, you can find a steam locomotive F185, an example of the classic NZR F-class 060 saddle tanks. She was built in 1878, but unlike her classmates 13 and 180, she is not in operational condition. Indeed, 185 hasn't run for the better part of 20 years, and would require a whole new boiler in order to run again. Meanwhile, CB117 was parked outside at the other end of the shed. This locomotive was built in 1927 by A&G Price, but wasn't in steam due to being out of ticket. However, I do have some footage of this locomotive from when she was still in steam, recorded in May 2022. One of the more unusual locomotives in the BTC's collection is this Goodman battery-electric shunter, built in 1922. Later in the day, she gave cab rides up and down the yard. Soon after TR459 and Drewry 401 passed by, the Tiny Planet shunter was fired up to drag Packet 1630 and Drewry 402 out of the shed. 1630 was built by Pickett and Sons of Bristol, England in 1923, which makes her 101 years old at the time of uploading. She was built specifically for the Puke-Miro colliery, and as such, she couldn't be preserved in a more appropriate place. I know of a few other Pickett-built steam locomotives that are preserved at heritage lines in Whangarei, Kawakawa, and Waihi, but I still haven't seen the 440 in Kawakawa at the time of uploading. Meanwhile, TR-367 was parked outside the coach workshop, at the far eastern end of the yard. This locomotive was built in 1957, and differs from her younger sisters, 436 and 459, by way of a smaller grille at the front. She remained in service for an incredibly long time, even lasting well into the KiwiRail era, as proven by these photographs that I took in Te Awamutu back in 2016. 367 arrived at the Bush Tramway Club in 2019, and has since been repainted in this red, with grey roof, livery. She is powered by a Gardner 6LW prime mover, which produces 111 horsepower. As for why the cabside number plates read 105 instead of 367, that's because 105 was this locomotive's original number. I was allowed to have a look in the TR's cab, and as I did so, I wondered what Laurie Rose would think of this locomotive, and the BTC's collection in general. TR-367 reminds me of some of the shunters that have featured on Laurie's Mechanical Marvels, more specifically in his Laurie Goes Loco series. Returning to Pickett 1630, I saw that one of the volunteers had opened the smokebox door. And while the engine was outside, people were allowed to climb up on her footplate. As I expected, the footplate of this little tank engine was nowhere near as spacious as the likes of J1234, a big 482 tender engine built in 1939. After I saw Drewry 401 and TR459 from 367's cab, things went a bit pear-shaped. From what I recall, one of the coaches derailed near the Rotowaro end of the track, and a TR459 had to continue running a reduced capacity passenger service all by herself. The Pickett, Planet and Goodman engines had stopped far enough beyond the points for TR-367 to clear them too. .367 sat in this spot while the men gathered some planks of wood and a jack for the derailed coach. To pass the time, I went to get some more static shots of the other locomotives before 367 left on her rescue mission. While TR-459 continued with the passenger service, the Goodman got to work shunting Drewry 402, Pickett 1630 and CB 117 back into the shed. It was around this time when cab rides started to be offered aboard the Goodman locomotive, and I had my turn soon after she shunted a CB 117 back inside. The funny thing with this battery locomotive, aside from her garish yellow paint job, is her complete silence while stationary, but then she's rather noisy while in motion.
What's this? Fly overnight.
Now this train is slow.
It's a bit of flying, isn't it?
Are we really just gonna crash? Yeah, I'm gonna crash. Why are we stopping?
Nobody knows what that word means now.
How old are you?
Going uphill.
I'm 6.
Hang on.
Oh, the bada bada. 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 Oh, the bada bada.
Hang on.
Hey!
The driver decided to move the locomotive over to the station itself. I'm guessing this was to give the punters another interesting thing to watch while waiting for their train.
Just onto the loop to give the kids a ride.
I stuck around in the Goodman's cab for a little while longer, and got another unusual angle on TR459 as she left the station. I must stress that I didn't mess with any part of the battery shunter, or any of the BTC's locomotives, for that matter. It wasn't until after 1 o'clock when I finally went for a ride behind TR 459. Despite the reduced capacity of the passenger service, it didn't feel too noisy or cramped when I was on board. Normally I can't stand being in cramped spaces with loads of other people, especially when they're all talking at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Australia Zoe. Laura's sister works in Australia Zoo now, so she's at the veterinary clinic in Australia Zoo. She trained as a vet in New Zealand and she went to Australia and now she's a vet in New Zealand. She does a lot of reptiles, so dealing with snakes. One of our trials is down there. So it's 4 broodies and a piggy.
Hey.
But we're there that Saturday to Saturday. So it doesn't matter what day. We're there for a pro shoot for a week, for last week of school holidays. Yeah. Basically, choices in your life.
At this point in the afternoon, TR459 still had another 2 passenger runs before the railway closed for the day. After she left, Drewry 401's prime mover was shut down.
It's always off trying to notice if there are. I'm trying for something. I don't know what does it.
After the normal train ride, I walked back to the siding where TR436 was parked. When TR459 wasn't trundling past, this part of the yard was eerily quiet. Behind the TR, there was this LA freight wagon that had been modified with a roof and picnic tables. Not a bad idea, if I'm honest. Lastly, I got one final shot of TR459 propelling A1319 before returning home. I can easily recommend visiting this railway for yourself if you ever get the chance.